Yo, what's up? It's Ben Scarborough. I'm sitting here at Third Eye Collective in the secret room with a walking civil rights legend. Ladies and gentlemen, Nathan Knight.
Hey, man, it's great to be here with you today.
Yeah.
We've been trying to hook up.
Like two ships passing in the night.
Yeah, but the ships got together today.
And they did. We docked at the same station. Hey, we getting that fuel? Yeah.
This is great.
Isn't it fun podcasting, right?
You know, it's new to me. Seen a little bit of it. But
It's like new age radio. It's like a radio in a controlled environment, radio that we can control.
That's great. I don't like to be controlled too much. You know, I'm a civil rights activist.
Right. Well, you know, we're going to blow the roof off this sucker in just a minute. So for everybody at home that doesn't know, Nate has been in the civil rights scene for decades.
Hey, I met Dr. Martin Luther King when I was 11 years of age.
And you know what? That's actually a great story. So why don't you let everybody at home know that story? What was that like for you?
Well, it was a very unique experience. I sold newspapers in Greensboro, North Carolina. We moved to Greensboro.
How old were you at that time?
11.
11, okay.
I was 11 years of age. We moved from Tarboro, North Carolina to Greensboro because of the hurricanes that came through, Hurricane Hazel. She came through and just ravaged the east coast of North Carolina. My parents saw the devastation coming, and we got out ahead of the storm and moved to Greensboro. My father just gotten out of World War II just a few years before, so we were sort of unstable there.
Okay.
But I was selling newspapers. My brothers sold newspapers, Harry, Bill, and I was the youngest. They direct my steps, and I couldn't deviate too much. But on this particular day, I was coming from my aunt's house on Gar Street in Greensboro. And as I came to the Bennett College campus, I could see cars over on the campus. People dressed different than I'm accustomed to the students dressing, and so I knew something special was going on that day. So I ran, jumped over a brick wall fence that they have that's about 5 feet tall. I'm just a little guy, but I got over that fence because I could save some time and start selling my papers quickly. And I approached the area where the cars were, and there were people gathered around one of the cars, and there was a fellow there standing there talking. So I went to the back side of the car not to disturb him. And the gentleman that had his feet hanging out of the car, tall, lanky, I approached him to buy my paper, the Future Outlook newspaper, which was African-American paper put out by James Franklin Johnson. And I felt real proud to sell that paper, so I asked him to buy one. He looked at me and said, yeah, I'll buy one. No trouble at all. It was an easy sell. And there was another guy, so I turned around. He was in the back seat, and I asked him if he would buy one of my papers. He said yes. They both said yes. So I was waiting for them to give me the money, and eyeing this guy that was talking to the people. And there he was, and I said, no, I won't bother him. And he turned around just at that moment. Young man, can you tell me what's in that newspaper? And I proudly said, yes, I can tell you. And I was sort of taken aback. Very few people questioned me about what was in the paper. They bought it because they were familiar with it. And I told them what was on the page 6 of the paper. When you open the newspaper, it was just 2 sheets folded together. Sometimes it would be 3 folded together. But on page 6, you always had who was in the hospital,
Okay.
what room they were in, what church did they go to?
Oh, interesting.
And you also had the address, and I felt like that was the news because I sold more newspaper because of that. He looked at me and said, I'm going to buy one of your papers because I think you do know what's in it. He reached in his pocket and pulled out some change, and there was a quarter. He gave me the quarter. He said, I'm going to pay for theirs and mine, and you keep the tip.
Very nice.
Man, it was very, very nice. I only made 2 cents off each paper.
Oh, okay.
I just got a 10-cent tip. I have to sell 5 papers to get 10 cents.
You got a tip from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
That's awesome.
And I didn't know who he was. It would be a moment. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the one that gave me the quarter. The first person I spoke to was Rev. David Abernathy, who was with Dr. Martin Luther King the year before, and they created the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in that year, 1957. It was 1958 when I met Dr. King.
Okay.
And I learned the story as to why he was on the campus. But more than that, I'm going to tell you that part a little bit later. But let me tell you about why he was on the campus. Dr. King was invited to North Carolina A&T College, which was an agriculture and technical school at that time, by the president, Warren T. Gibbs. And the invitation was sent to him from the NAACP. And Mr. Kilimanjaro was the gentleman that invited Dr. King. He was the secretary. He was the one that put the letter together that went out.
Okay. Dr.
Gibbs had to let Dr. King know there had been a change of heart. He couldn't come over on the A&T campus to speak. North Carolina A&T State was a co-ed school, and there was a reason for Dr. King choosing that school to come. He was laying the foundation for some things that's going to happen in the future. And North Carolina A&T State was the place that was chosen. Bennett College was an all-girls school, but it was a Methodist college, and as a result, they didn't have the board of regency to deal with that A&T had. So he went over to he went over to Bennett College and brought the story of what was taking place at Montgomery, Alabama, what was taking place in Selma, what was taking place in other parts of Alabama and Mississippi.
And that was usual for Martin to do at the time because he was in the early rebel rouser days, as you were telling me, right?
Like, well, it's interesting that you would use that word, Ben, because my daddy told me to stay away from the rebel rouser. We never talked about this. It's not something you and I had dialogue about, but yes, he was considered to be the rebel rouser. And the word out to young people, they knew he was coming, but they didn't tell us what he looked like. They didn't tell us where he was going to be, but make sure we stayed away from the rebel rouser.
Okay.
And there I was, right in the midst of one of the greatest spokesmen of our time, but I didn't know it. I did not know it. What happened, I sold my papers out to all the other people that was there, and I had this opportunity to either go and get some more papers or go inside, sit down, and listen to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
That is awesome.
What do you think I did, Jim?
You probably sat there and listened to him speak, right? Like everybody else, maybe.
No,
or maybe you sold him more newspapers?
I was a little different. I sold out all my papers, and I needed more to make more money, so I ran as far as I could. You know, right on the edge of Bennett College, 2 blocks away was the railroad tracks. I ran down those railroad tracks as fast as my little legs would carry me, all the way to Market Street, where I was able to get more newspapers and come back.
Okay.
And when I came back, that's when my world changed.
What happened?
Well, I went inside, I sat down, and I started listening to this guy talk. Looking around the room, I saw people that I knew, a few people that I knew. I had already seen one guy outside that stayed across the street from us. His name was Ezel Blair. But I also saw the minister of our church, United Institutional Baptist Church. My minister was there, and he was the one that opened up. I wasn't there to hear that. So Dr. King started to tell the people of Greensboro how important it was for them to vote, that there were people in the country that did not have the right to vote. In Greensboro, they could vote without any real objection in the community by whites, and that was unusual. The community in Greensboro was made basically of college kids, and you had the Quaker influence there, William Penn. They had people that would settle there, and they were pretty decent people. So the same problems wasn't there. So he told them, he said, I want to let you know that you aren't taking advantage of one of the biggest tools that African Americans have today, which is the right to vote. And because you're not doing that, you need to get off your butts. I said, wow. You would need to get off of your butts, and you need to go to the polls, and you need to cast your vote, because in Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia, the right to vote is there, but the people have so much opposition that you do not have here in North Carolina. And that was part of the message. I didn't hear his entire speech, but I knew that I was sitting in the midst of something dynamic.
Historic.
Yeah, and I said, wow. And as I left, I sold more papers, got a chance to speak to Dr. King, got a chance to speak to Rev. David Abernathy and thank them for purchasing papers from me. But I had to elbow my way a little bit because I was a little taut.
Okay.
And everybody was vying for this guy. And I really think that changed my direction.
So on the timeline of your life, if we zoom out a little bit from that moment, if we come to the present, you actually are the South DeKalb chapter president of the SCLC, right? Yeah,
not by design, Ben. I am currently the president of DeKalb County Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And
now, for everybody at home that may not know what that is, why don't you go ahead and bring it home?
Well, Southern Christian Leadership Conference was an organization that was set up by Dr. Martin Luther King in 1957. In attendance, you had Rev. David Abernathy, Samuel Harvey, two of the young men that I saw.
Right.
When I met Dr. King, was only 29 years of age. And the year before, at age 28, he had set up the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was a civil rights arm. And the reason for doing that, he wanted to try to help African Americans get their right to vote, have the opportunity to participate in segregated community in an integrated way. So he wanted positive things for everyone, not just for a few.
Okay.
And he felt like that wasn't in place at that time.
And so the SCLC is still alive and well today, and you find yourself at the helm of an organization that is doing well in the community, right?
Yes, I do. I have to say that the DeKalb County chapter is one of the biggest voices in the country. If there's an issue that needs addressing, we will address it, and we will address it intelligently but very forcefully.
Okay. Just like Martin would.
Well, every time I look at this guy, every time I think about him, I think about a young man, 29 years of age. Today I'm 72.
I'm 29.
Yeah, you see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So here's a guy that knew early on that he was going to do something to affect people and bring about a change, love, agape love for everyone. That was his life mission. Civil rights was just something that was a part of the step and the process. But his life mission was to bring agape love to the world. And he was successful in doing that.
Okay.
He was given a Nobel Peace Prize because of this, not because of the civil rights movement, but because he brought what the world needed to deal with and the tools that they needed to have to handle the issues that we'd be facing across in every country, not just America, Russia, China. Every country in the world honors and respects Dr. King because of agape love. The civil rights things was just an extra. So let me share something with you, Ben.
Yeah, go ahead.
At age 14, Dr. King was a student at Morehouse College here in Atlanta, Georgia. He read in the newspaper, the Atlanta Journal and Constitution newspaper, he read that down in Walton County, Moore's Ford Bridge crossing, a lynching had taken place that upset him so much that at age 14, he wrote an article to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about this. Very few people today even know that he attended school at 14. They don't know that he wrote an article, that he was that concerned about what was going on in his world.
Okay.
At age 14, think about what you were thinking about as a kid.
I was trying to get the Nintendo to come on.
There you go, Ben. And I was still trying to sell more newspapers. But this guy had this vision. And I think that incident put him on course for a direction that would affect all of mankind.
Okay.
His concern for others and wanting the right thing to be done. And he felt like that the right time to do something, if it's morally wrong, is to correct it then, not later.
And that's a wonderful way to go about life, to deal with it right then and there instead of putting it off, right? Right
then and there, And when he set up his organization, he set up to have chapters all across the United States. DeKalb SCLC was born out of misunderstandings that had taken place within the corporate structure of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And there was bickering and fighting that was going on, infighting that was going on. The accusation of money is being taken and being misused. And I was hurt by that. The thing that drew me more to wanting to do something was because this young man that I met at age 29, in the same year that I met him, he was stabbed by an African-American woman who was trying to take his life. And if that knife has gotten just a little bit closer, I'm talking about centimeters, he would have been dead. He had gone through a struggle. And his first struggle, his first absolutely physical confrontation was that young woman who was trying to take his life.
I see. I didn't even know that.
Yes. Well, I'm glad I had knowledge of this to share it.
Now we all know.
Yes. So Dr. King's life was threatened at age 29 by an African-American woman who stabbed him.
What?
And from that day forward, it seemed like tragedy followed the family.
Oh, okay.
You know, let me give you a little bit, and we could go up and come back. But Dr. King's mother was shot while sitting down at the organ. She was playing the organ. A friend of mine who was a school teacher at Murphy High School here in Atlanta, Georgia, had invited me on that day to church with him. He taught Sunday school. And another friend of mine, Reverend Lewis Berry, invited me to Birmingham, Alabama to go and visit his family in A.G. Gaston that Sunday morning. And I chose to go with Lewis Berry. And it was unfortunate. En route to Birmingham, Alabama, we learned of the killing of Dr. King's mother. She was shot and killed by Chenault. Chenault was a deranged young man that came into the church with the idea of really to hurt Dr. King's father. But because the mother came out to play the organ on that Sunday morning, she wasn't playing every Sunday. Mm-hmm. But this was a Sunday that she was playing, and she came out before Daddy King was back in the back, getting ready, preparing with his sermon for church that day. So tragedy struck this family more than one time. His brother, A.D. King, there are a lot of people don't remember that he even had a brother. But Dr. King's brother, A.D. King, was the one that was drowned. He was drowned.
Really?
In his backyard. He was drowned, and he was a great swimmer. And he was drowned, and they said it was suicide. Well, Ben, one of the things that I find out through our history, African-American history, is that when we are lynched, there is no real inquiry that takes place. You see, America did not prepare itself for African Americans in the aftermath of slavery. They could only see slavery itself and what use that it had. But there was things that would take place because they did not prepare, did not know, did not think. But then Dr. King was killed. I can never forget that day that Dr. King was killed.
What was going on that day?
Well, for me, I was a young kid that was working in the acoustical ceiling business, and I was at next door to an architect's office drawing up plans. I have a photo that was taken by my brother Bill. I'm his youngest brother. He took a picture, and I was just staring into space with a shirt and tie on, short sleeve shirt, inside the office looking over a set of plans, but really gazing at a wall. Mm-hmm. That could not give me an answer, could not give me reasons why, how. It was a very shocking thing, and my generation had to endure assassinations. That's not something that your generation know anything about. Yeah. But we went through Dr. King's death, and then John F. Kennedy, our president, was shot and killed in Dallas, and then later his brother, Robert Kennedy, mm-hmm. who was responsible really for getting Dr. King out of jail. Oh, okay. That's another story that people don't know. Dr. King got a parking ticket. I remember one day you got a parking ticket. But Dr. King got a parking ticket, but unlike you, where you had a chance to pay a fine and go on, they housed him over in DeKalb County Jail in the middle of the night. They put him inside of a transport wagon with dogs in the back to transport him to Reedsville jail. Reedsville is the most notorious jail in all of the Southeast. This way, the worst of the worst goes to Reedsville, but they had Dr. King going to Reedsville jail.
Okay.
And it was Robert Kennedy who was approached by telephone by Dr. King's wife asking for intervention in that process. The judge in that case was Judge Cooper. Judge Cooper was a entrepreneur that had a tire business over in DeKalb County. He also had property out in the Snellville area.
Okay.
And many black men would be put in jail so they could go and work on his properties. But Reverend Cooper, you got to excuse me, Ben, I'm getting choked up a little bit here.
No, take your time.
But Judge Cooper had taken Dr. King and put him in with those vicious dogs, and nobody knew what the outcome was going to be. His wife, in the middle of the night, called Bobby Kennedy and asked him to intervene, and he did. It was the intervention of Bobby Kennedy through conversation to the governor and a direct conversation to the sheriff and another conversation to the judge to let them know that if a hair was to be out of place with Dr. Martin Luther King, then the wrath of the National Guards would be in Georgia.
Oh, wow.
And that next morning, he was released.
As he should be.
Yeah, he was released. But for parking ticket.
Yeah.
Parking ticket.
Yeah, that's just something that I can't even fathom.
Well, a lot of people don't understand what it would be like to have been in his shoes. First of all, he did not choose this path. He was prepared for the path, but it wasn't a choice that he chose. Men approached him when he was in Dexter Street Baptist Church preaching, and they reached out to him because he was the guy that had that. He had that voice, he had that knowledge, he had that wisdom, he knew the history.
Yeah.
And all of that combined, and he could deliver it. They wanted this guy to be a part of what was taking place there in Montgomery. And he chose to do so. When do you decide to be a leader? I often wrestle with that question. You don't decide. You're born one. We all have that thing inside of us. And some people allow it to awaken, and others will push it aside and do other things. They might even try to play Nintendo games for a minute. But at some point, there's a voice and a quality that's in a person, and they're going to have to answer that call. You got to answer that call, Ben. When I met you, you was a young man that came from Auburn University to Atlanta, and you was enthralled about what was taking place in the music scene and what was taking place in the rap scene, and you really wanted to do something, but you came with the goal of making a movie. And I always wondered, and I always asked, Ben, what are you doing now? Because I knew that that's what you came to do. So that thing inside of us, it's got to live. You can't keep suppressing it. It's going to burst out one day.
Yeah.
And look what has happened. You got all this knowledge. You come full circle.
Yeah.
You got the ability to be able to do just what you set out to do as a kid.
And it only took 9 years.
9 years, yeah.
We're actually sitting here at this table. I want to say in October it will be 9 years since Nate and I first met. When I first moved here, I leased a house a few miles down from a community arts center called Wonder Root, and I think they're still there. Are they still there?
They're still there, and they got one of the largest contracts. They performed the contracts for the NFL games.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I did see that.
Yeah,
I saw the press release.
Yes, all the murals that's in Atlanta that was created
Wonder
artistically came through Wonder Root.
So, me being 20, I hadn't even turned 21 at the time. I got on Google Maps, and I was typing in art centers. I was looking for basically like a community to get into. And I walked into this house that had been converted into like an art studio, basically. And Nate was sitting there with his cowboy hat on, and he was painting in the corner of a room. And so there was Nate, and then there was like a bunch of other people of varying age groups, right?
Yes, most of them younger than me.
Yeah, but I just naturally, I guess I'm an old soul or whatever. I think I clicked up with Nate. I was able to relate more with Nate than I was to people my own age at the time, and so. And we called him Top Pop at the time. Yeah, I think people still call you Top Pop,
right? They still call me Top Pop. And they asked me where did it come from? I said it came from a young man that went to school in Auburn that came to Atlanta to create movies, and he and I went across the Southeast traveling so I could get him.
Nate and I hit the road, man.
We hit the road. The truth of the matter, Ben, I wasn't white enough and you wasn't black enough. So we had to merge the two so we could get it right.
Yes, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it did. Those road trips, I really look back on those days. We went to Asala. We went to Raleigh, North Carolina, where the Asala.
That was a real eye-opening experience for me. Asala, I'd never heard of it. I'd never been to it. And Nate brought me, and I was able, dude, it was like an amazing weekend. Yeah,
well, Carter G. Woodson created Asala. And today it's one of the largest educational events that take place in America that tell the history and the story of the African Americans, and educators from all over the country, really now all over the world, come to share with us their treaties and rights and papers that they're going to use to get their master's and doctoral degrees. It's a great organization.
Yeah, I want to go again.
I'm going to hold you to it,
Let's
man.
Go.
We're going to do it. We're going to do it. But I got to go back a little bit. I want to go back. I want to go back. Okay, so here we are with a young man, 29 years of age, and he can't see into the future to know what his future is going to be. Mm-hmm. He's moving at a rapid pace. America needed someone. You know, in preparation for what was going to happen with Dr. King, it was men like Booker T. Washington that set the stage. It was people like Henry Grady that wanted a different South than the South that existed. And in order to get the story straight, you got to talk about the vision and the wisdom of whites and blacks alike that wanted something better for the South. So I want to mention Henry Grady because he was a man, he was a visionary. And the early 1800s, 1880, 1885, those years, Henry Grady saw a South where whites and blacks can live together, and he didn't think it was necessary for one group to use a tool over the other group, or that there was a danger because one group would come up or both groups would come up.
Okay.
And so he was a progressive thinker. He laid the foundation for a young Booker T. Washington to come and speak here in Atlanta.
You guys hear this?
Yeah.
This is historical now.
Booker T. Washington spoke at the Fair and Exposition in Atlanta, Georgia at Piedmont Park. I think it was around 1895.
Okay.
And he delivered a speech that pleased 5 different groups that could not work in conjunction with one another. And let me tell you, you had the northerner businessman, the southern businessman, you had the southern farmer who was oppressed because properties had been taken from him. He did not have labor to do work. You had the freed slave who could not do any work, who was not trained. And then you got those who had aspirations for training and education. Mm-hmm. He delivered a speech to all 5 of those people. And all 5 people jumped and clapped in jubilation at the end of the speech. Yet, they all connected on different components of what was spoken about.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. And he did it because it wasn't his desire to tell a good speech. It was his desire to be a healer of the community.
Okay, yeah.
And that's what Booker T. Washington did. And I thank him for it. And I think that men like Rockefeller, who gave him thousands and millions of dollars at some point to help build Tuskegee Institute and to build other organizations around our country, historical black schools, we would not have them if it wasn't for the men like Booker T. Washington and him reaching out to Northerners who can make a contribution. And at the head of that list was the Rockefellers. So
message.
Yeah, so You know, you are where you are today because someone else had to go through a trial. Someone else had to go through the test. Someone else had to take the pain. Someone else had to have the brick thrown at them.
Ouch.
And someone else had to do the swimming in the water.
Yeah.
You know, so don't wade in that water. You had to swim in that water. Which brings me to something else, Ben. You know, I grew up in Tarboro, North Carolina. You and I never got a chance to go there. But in the back of our property was the Tar River. And as a young boy, you had to swim in the water. To swim in the water, you have to jump off of the bridge into the currents of the Tar River.
Okay.
I'm 5 years of age.
Okay.
I'm learning how to swim
Sink
in
or
the Tar
swim.
River. Yeah. And that's what life is about. You got to jump out there in it. You got to live it, and you are going to sink or swim. And so far, it's not a lot of barriers. Somebody is doing the breaststroke.
Somebody.
And it's got to be you.
Someone's doing the doggy paddle, though.
That's exactly right. But they all are swimming,
Yeah.
and they all are getting to the other side or getting to where they can be safe. And that's what Dr. King did. He brought information to people. He didn't try to make them digest it or ingest it. He said, look at these two factors. Which one of these is going to make our world better, stronger? Which one? So, what action do you think you need to take?
He pretty much presented everyone with the obvious choice.
The obvious choice.
Yeah, and the world is a much better place for it.
Well, look at you and I. We're sitting here,
In the same room.
and now you're black enough,
Yeah. Hey, ATL.
and I'm white enough
Yeah.
for us to merge together and be great enough. You
Isn't that
think-
something?
It is.
I love this country, and I love this day and age. And, you know, I can't thank, you know, everybody who came before me for making something like this possible, or at least less difficult than it ever should have been. Because all I had to do was call Nate and say, hey, man, I'm about to pick you up, dude.
Hey,
I'm pulling up.
and he pulled up. He pulled up in his car. Sometimes it wasn't enough gas when he got there, but it's okay. We put bubble gas in it.
Those were the days.
And we travel. I remember we went to Livingston College. My great,
Yeah, that was a great trip.
my great Uncle John C. Dancy was a part of the 1898 race riot.
Yep.
His papers all was at Livingston College, and I never forget the day that you and I went there, and you went with me so that I could try to get information so we could see those papers.
Yeah.
Well, we was told to come back so that we could. They made it possible, but we got busy in our lives doing other things. I want us to make that journey.
You know what?
Yeah,
Let's
we need
make
to
that journey.
We need to make that journey.
We need to re-up on a little trip to Livingston College.
Yeah. And you all are not familiar with Atlanta in its earliest days, in its formative years, and the struggles and the evolutionary stages that it had to go through. But you had a lot of people that helped make that possible. I mentioned to you about Henry Grady, but Alonzo Herndon, who had the insurance business, he was one of the greatest men in the city, African-American businessman, who had a 25 seat barbershop downtown Atlanta on Peachtree Street, where white men was able to get their haircut. And they did. They loved his service, and they paid him dearly for it. This man was able to build an insurance business, one of the largest in the United States of America. And it came because two groups, black and white, came together, saw a need. One fulfilled the money, and the other fulfilled the labor to do the job. And that's what is making the South strong. It's unity. Unity, that's the key. The key component for success in Atlanta and all of Georgia is unity. You do not have to be threatened by my knowledge or be threatened by what I learn and what I do, because the world is going to progress. It's going to change. It's not going to stay where we are. It's going to advance. It's going to take more creative knowledge, and everybody got to input into it in order for all of us to benefit.
So tell everybody what's going on in Selma this week. Is it this week?
Yeah, Selma, Alabama, March the 3rd, the first Sunday in March. Bloody Sunday is one of the heartfelt events that took place in our history. In Alabama, you have state troopers that met people like F.D. Reese and Amelia Boynton, who was on the bridge that day. They were making a march across the M.L.K. Bridge en route to Montgomery, just asking for the right to vote. Want to have something that the Constitution said you have.
Yeah.
But you had those who stood in the way and said, no, you can't do this. And so they walked on that bridge on that particular day. You had hundreds of people that was beaten by highway patrolmen and law enforcement officers and Klansmen and just racist people who did not understand that letting Americans have the right to vote was a constitutional matter that was decided by our forefathers long before the problem ever existed. They saw deep into a future, and then you had those who benefited from that future wanting to take what those forefathers saw, and they wanted to take that away from some of the people. We were in bondage when the right to vote was given. We was in bondage when the Constitution was written. But the history shows that the wisdom of those who wrote the Constitution, they took things in consideration that were futuristic. We got a living Constitution that served the people, and when it needs to change, then the process to change it through amendments were already set forward.
Yes.
And the government was already set forward. We have a Congress, we have the Supreme Court, we have the presidency, and all of those have to work in concert with one another. No one can do, they can try, but no one can usurp the authority and the spirit in which the Constitution of the United States was written. And it's for all of us. Bloody Sunday came about because a governor decided, no, you're not going to have the right to vote. No, you're not going to be able to congregate. No, you're not going to be able to have
it's Selma, Alabama.
Equal access. In Selma, Alabama. Selma was a place that nobody in the world knew about until this situation presented itself. It was chosen because it was a large black belt of people that stayed there that was suppressed. And one of the things that you have to understand about the movement is that it wasn't Dr. King's movement. It was the people's movement. The Montgomery Improvement Organization was set up, and it laid the stage and foundation for people like Rosa Parks and the other, the NAACP, to stand up against oppression there. And you had oppression in rural Albany, Georgia, where the people were suppressed, did not have equal rights, did not have equal access, could not use community services, could not eat in certain restaurants, could not do anything. So America had changed, but the South was slower to accept the inevitability that all of us will have to come together and live in America, not at the expense of one another, but we will all make each other stronger. Selma, Alabama, on Bloody Sunday, March the 3rd, Jimmy Lee Jackson was killed protecting his father. Can you imagine? You were 29. When I met you, you was around 19, 20 years of age. Yep. And your father was protective over you. He really didn't want you to leave home. He wanted you to stay there and go to school in Auburn. And he did so because he understood there's a world out there. And you said, Dad, I want to go out there. I want to see what this world is all about. He said, no, son, I want you to stay. And that battle between father and son, mother and daughter, is the same thing that took place between the states. And one group could see where it was not a problem, which I explained, Henry Grady. Mm-hmm. He was progressive, futuristic. And others like Bull Connors and George Wallace, they saw something different. So we had Bloody Sunday where...
And this is the anniversary of Bloody Sunday coming up.
Yeah, this anniversary that's coming up is the 53rd anniversary, 54th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Next year, every 5 years, we would do the reenactment from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery. We walked the entire distance.
And there's a bridge. This is a legendary bridge involved.
Yes, Ever Pettis Bridge. The people in Selma, they went to the churches and they met at their church and they discussed everything that was taking place and they made a decision. The pastor made a decision. It's ironic that you had about 8 or 9 churches in the area, but all of them on Sunday morning was talking about the same thing. And they got together collectively outside of a federal housing project in Selma, Alabama, and planned the march. And they marched up until they got to the bridge. When they got to Edmund Pettus Bridge, that's Edmund, E-D-M-U-N-D, Pettus, P-E-T-T-U-S. I'm from North Carolina. Got a slight lisp. So I don't want you not to be able to understand what I say, but
all the links to these historical events, by the way, will be in the video description. I'm going to have Wikipedia articles that are directly like what Nate is referencing. You're going to be able to look it up. Just find those links in the. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So on this particular day, they started up the bridge, and they got almost to the pinnacle of the bridge where they could see to the other side. On the other side, you had the Klansmen, you had National Guards, you had Bull Connors and his people and his dogs that was going to meet the people right at the top of the bridge, and it did so. And it was ugly.
What happened?
Men, women, and children was beat with billy clubs. Some of them jumped over into the water, and some jumped off over into the land. Reverend Hosea Williams saved a little girl named Cheyenne. He put draped his body over him, and it took a vicious beating that day. Willie Bolton, a Georgia and Atlanta preacher, he's dead now. He was the one that led the mule train from Mississippi up to Washington, D.C. He was one of the men that jumped over. John Lewis, who's a congressman now, he was beat unmercifully all about the head. You could still see the cuts and gashes. One of the things that people don't understand, that the beatings that took place in communities across America left people injured.
Oh, yeah.
It left real body injuries to people. That's not done by the incision of a doctor. Hatred is a bad thing in our society, and the teachings of Dr. King have kept a lot of hatred from boiling over into acts of violence. The King of philosophy is what guides the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and all their presidents and all their members. We take a vow that if someone hits you, you won't hit back. If someone cut you, you won't cut back. If someone stand in your way to keep you from going forward, that you would sit down or lie down in peaceful resistance. These are some of the things that Dr. King put into practice in the King of philosophy that was taken from Mahatma Gandhi and from other philosophers. And he used those, and he used them very strongly.
And this Selma event has been documented well throughout history. And I can't even imagine that the people in power, the political people in power who were authorized this event, back then, how could they know that this wasn't going to be a pivotal point in history,
Well, this is the thing that people will have to learn to give Dr. King some credit about. He was a strategist. He had a team of men around him, and some of them you may know. John Lewis is one, C.T. Vivian another. He had Rev. David Abernathy and Dr. Lowry, Sammy was there for him from day one. He had the vision and wisdom of even a singer, Mahalia Jackson, and a beauty shop owner. All these people had knowledge and wisdom that he pulled from, and he had the schools and colleges around the country. So if you want an answer to a question, he didn't always take his own opinion about things. He would measure those things and then weigh it up against, he liked to call it he always believed that in all situations that the wheels of justice was always turned in the way of the moral right, and he would call this the moral compass, and it does. It starts off in a dark way, but it ends up in a light way. So Edmund Bridge was very dark on that day, but today it's very light. We have the right to vote. We have people that have died. F.D. Reese died 3 or 4 years ago. He was the father of the Voters' Rights Act. He was the one that led the teachers in Selma, Alabama. James Orange was a part of the Montgomery Improvement Association, but he's gone before us. Rosa Parks, the first and only black woman to be held in state in the Rotunda in Washington, D.C. America have seen that it made some mistakes. We are a work in progress. This country did not come here with all of the answers. It came with people who desired answers and desired change in their life. And the doors were open to everyone that wanted to come. You got people from all over the world who have been able to come to America and live. The problem is that we were already here. And so now some adjustments got to be made. You see, if you went to work every day and got paid a check, and when you were able to come home, take care of your family and pay your bills, then everything's all right.
Yeah.
But what happened when someone inject issues in between that?
Oh, then we finna have problems, Dan.
And that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. You see, all of America was in on slavery at the beginning. But as time went forward and industrialization came into being, then one segment of the company said, hey, we don't need this as much. But you guys got to change what you're doing. Well, the people that had to change didn't have a way of making that change. They didn't see how they could do it and how they could maintain their land, their property, schools, education for their children. They couldn't see those things, and that wasn't provided. So you had this friction that came between two groups. And in the middle of that, you had two more groups that was affected. You had the American Indians, and you also had the African Americans. If you roll the clock back a little bit further, you would have had three groups. You would have had the African Americans, you had the American Indians, you had the white Americans. Now, why would I say you would have the white Americans? Because we have to understand that many of the whites that came into America came here as indigent servants.
Right.
They had to serve out a time span with someone for a certain amount of time to pay their way for having come into this country. And that is a form of slavery.
Yeah.
So that's what this country is made out of. Where are we today? We're in a much better place. We still got some things to work on.
Agreed.
And we are looking forward to those challenges as a country. We're more coherent, even though some are Republicans, some are Democrats, some are independents. When it comes down to protection of this country, we are one. We are one nation with one God, one Constitution, and one law for all.
That's right.
And that is the America, and that is the America that Dr. King wanted. And I'm glad to see fractions of that America in place today, Ben.
Yes, sir. And you know what? You guys are going to be able to catch Nate down at Selma this weekend.
Well, you're right. Bloody Sunday is a Southern Christian Leadership Conference initiative. And when Sunday comes, I will be at the forefront of the group.
You guys are going to go across the bridge.
We're going to go across that bridge, man. But we gather at the African Episcopal Church, and we start from that point. So it's the rallying point. So I have to make sure that all the dignitaries that's with SLC are at the front of that march. There are several marches that take place. John Lewis may have already did a march ahead of us.
Yeah.
And may come back and be a part of this march or be a part of the interviews. There are a lot of different things that are taking place. Do you know that Congressman Lewis takes a group of senators and members of the House of Representatives, Democrats and Republicans, and they go through a tour of the civil rights, they call it the Civil Rights Trail, and they do it a day or two before Selma, and they end up at Selma, but they continue that tour before they go back to Washington, D.C. And it's that type of grouping, it's that type of connecting that have made it possible for all of us to come closer together, regardless of what our differences are.
So I did not know that, but it definitely doesn't surprise me because of John Lewis's stance amongst a lot of these issues. In fact, we were just watching the Oscars last night, and right before they announced the Oscar for Best Picture, they brought out John Lewis, and they had him speak. I'm going to have to pull up that clip for you. But the picture that won Best Picture is a racially charged picture. And I thought that the fact that they have congressmen coming out to speak about these issues is interesting because look at him. Here he is. He's on national television in front of 37 million people talking about the same thing. Like, that's just his, like, that's his, you know, that's him.
That's him. But I got to share something you may have forgotten.
What's that?
When Ben and I was working together, we had what was called the National Civil Rights News.
Yes.
And on the front page of one of the issues is a picture of John Lewis. He's on the front page.
Oh, yeah.
And we got his story. Ben, he was not a cub reporter. He was the manager for National Civil Rights News.
Yeah.
And we did interviews of John Lewis, and we got a story of him. And I went to Washington, D.C., Ben, shortly after that, and I met with John Lewis in his office.
Yeah.
I made him take a picture with us holding National Civil Rights News
in
his office.
Yeah.
After I got a handful of those Georgia peanuts.
Yum.
That came from, it was a great time. We've done some great things, and I look forward to us doing some of those things. I would love to see National Civil Rights News TV become a reality. I think we're at a different point. Yeah.
I think we're going to have to make that happen.
Let's make it happen.
And you know, I guess maybe you guys don't know, but Nate and I could probably sit down at a table and podcast for 74 hours straight in a row.
Yes, we got a lot of things that have happened, a lot of things that we've done. There's a lot that I know about Ben, that Ben know about me, and there's a lot of interests that we have that's healthy and good for everyone.
Yeah.
And, I never forget the time that my little grandson lost Ben's camera.
This was the same Nikon DSLR that made it up to Washington, D.C. and took photographs of President Obama.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah, we got Obama, and we have Michelle coming down Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah.
On a very cold day. Yeah, Ben, it made it there.
I owned a camera that took pictures of the president, but alas, it did not come back to me. But physical things, you know, whatever. They're just material possessions. It's the historical factor that really mattered to me.
Yeah, we got some stuff. I got one that I just got to tell people about, Ben.
Go for it.
You know, we was over there. Warren Dunn had made a decision to create an organization to back the interests of his mother, and we was over there with Jimmy Carter, and Jimmy Carter and his people.
It was the housing initiative.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, so Jimmy Carter is it's like 9 in the morning, right?
It's 9 o'clock in the morning.
Jimmy Carter is there at the spot, and Nate is like, "Hey Ben, you got to take a picture with me and Jimmy Carter, right?" So that's the stage. I set the stage,
and so Ben said, "Yes, I'm going to do that." I said, "Well, listen, he's going to get out of the car. He's going to come around, and it's got to come this way." I said, "If you stand in the right position right here, I'll make sure that I'm with Jimmy Carter so you can get the picture." Well, he took the picture of Jimmy Carter. But what did you do, Ben? What happened?
I took a picture of President Jimmy Carter, but Nate is cropped out of the picture.
All
Half his face is in the frame, and Nate will never let me live that down.
No, but I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna give Ben a chance to correct that. One of the great things about Jimmy Carter is that he's still alive. He's still doing great things. He's still working with Habitat of Humanity. He's almost 100 years old now, but he's still got that zest for life, and he's still building houses. And Warren Darn is still
We're
waiting.
gonna have to take that picture.
We got to take that picture,
Yeah.
Ben.
Well, look, Nate, we're gonna have to also sit down and do this again. What do you say we get out of here and go get some sweet tea?
It's time for sweet tea and 3 slices of lemon. I'm all for that.
That's what's up, guys. I'm here with Mr. Nathan Knight, civil rights legend, in the secret room at Third Eye Collective. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this podcast. We're going to do this again. If you enjoyed today's episode, please let us know down in the comments what you want to see us talk about next. And
we'll see you at the mountaintop.
oh, yeah. Actually, you know what? Before we get out of here, just because we've got the ear of just about every hipster from here to outside of the perimeter, why don't you let everybody know about that?
Well, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King never got a chance to do what he said in his famous speech, which is let freedom reign from the mountaintop of Stone Mountain, Georgia, to the alligators of Pennsylvania. And so as president of DeKalb County Southern Christian Leadership Conference, that have really bothered me more than anything else. When I think of him, meeting him at age 11 and not getting a chance for him to see the contributions that other people have gotten from him and the things that he's done, I felt like that we needed to make it possible that the bell of freedom ring. Now you got to understand that Dr. King said, let freedom reign, R-E-I-G-N. And it will rain when you and I go to the mountaintop of Stone Mountain, Georgia, and ring the bell of freedom.
We're going.
And I want to know, where you go, Ben?
I'm sorry?
Where you go?
Oh yeah.
You're not scared, are you?
No, I'm going to be there with the camera crew. I'm going to be there with an assistant director. We're basically going to document this trip to the top of Stone Mountain to let freedom ring. We're going to get a chance to do what Dr. Martin Luther King wanted to do in his lifetime. You know.
And the better portion of the day are going to be events that's going to take place down at the bottom of the mountaintop before we go up. We're going to have people offering ideas and suggestions as to how we can better make things work in our communities. We're not going to be talking about the defacing of monuments. We're not going to be talking about any of that. We're there strictly for the edicts of Dr. Martin Luther King, the thing that he want us to do, to come together as men and women sharing the ideas of agape love.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And so you guys keep your eyes open for that date, because when we set that date, we're going to promote it. And you are going to, there's just going to be no way that you're going to be able to unsee the posters when they're promoted on Facebook. So, and please come join us, because it will be an historic event. And who knows, you may be in a classic piece of stock footage that may end up in a documentary on Netflix one day. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows?
It will be, Ben. It has never been done before. This has never been done by this organization, period. This would be the first and only time since 1957, when Dr. King started this movement, that someone took time to do something that was not related to the death or killing of someone else, to do something for humanity.
Yes.
And we're going to do that.
Yes. We're going to the top of the Stone Mountain, guys. So you heard it first. This is where it's happening, guys. Nathan Knight in the flesh.
We'll see you there.
Bye.